it wasn't until I got on a budgeting system that worked for me that I stopped cycling in and out of debt. Hi friends, welcome back to the Avocado Toast Budget. If you're new here, my name is Lexa, and today we are breaking down the top 10 things that I did to pay off $20,000 of credit card debt in a year. I broke down in this video here exactly how I got out of credit card debt and some of those major steps that I took, but I wanted to break down 10 of the tips that I learned along the way and the things that I did that really made a difference in me being able to pay off all of that debt in a short amount of time. None of these include giving up iced coffee or eating beans and rice or moving back in with your parents. They are all just realistic steps I took to navigate that debt. And I am hoping that they will inspire you on some ways that you can save some money and put some extra money toward that debt so that you can finally deal with all of that credit card debt that I know can be such a pain. So let's go ahead and get into it. Canceling unused subscriptions. This was a huge one for me. I had tons of different subscription services that I was paying for just pretty much because they were coming out of my account, not because they brought a lot of value or joy to my life. At one point, I had like all of the boxes. I had FabFitFun, the Cause box, Ipsy box. I had I had the Ipsy bags and the Ipsy box. And I had BoxyCharm and the like BoxyCharm Ultra or whatever it was. That was a lot of boxes. And when I started thinking about it, I realized that if people had offered me the amount of money that I paid for those products outside of a box, I wouldn't have paid for them most of the time. So the only one that I ended up actually keeping was FabFitFun, because that was the one that pretty much every single time whenever it would come in, I realized, hey, like I actually feel like I'm getting a good value out of this. It brings me a lot of joy. It's not a monthly subscription, so I didn't feel overloaded with a bunch of products I was never going to use. And I ended up just keeping the ones that I loved, and then I would give away the ones that I didn't. But I always found a lot of value in that box. I still have it today, but I ended up saving hundreds of dollars just from canceling those subscriptions that I didn't use or didn't care for that much. This also happens a lot with gym memberships that you don't actually get the use out of that you thought that you were going to, or different types of streaming accounts. What we have learned is that Netflix is included in our T-Mobile bill, and then we also have Amazon Prime, which means we have Prime Video. And between those two things and the fact that we use my mom's Hulu, we have like all of the entertainment we could possibly need. We were paying for Disney Plus at one point, and then we just decided it wasn't worth it to us. I really didn't realize just how much those monthly subscriptions really added up until I took those out of my budget and I was able to put that money toward debt instead. Also, if you are enjoying this video and you're learning some cool things, make sure that you hit that like button down below and push that subscribe button and bell notification. That way you never miss an upload. And let's keep going. The next thing that I did was negotiated my bills. And to be perfectly honest with you, I hate talking on the phone. I dread it. If someone calls me, I like panic. I absolutely hate it. So I thought there was no way it was going to be worth me calling all of these different companies to try to get like a buck or two off. But what ended up happening was the first time that I ended up calling our internet company, because they really only had like 2 different options that you could pick from online between your services. I talked to them. I told them that I was looking into a different company. They had better options. I would be paying like half of the price, and that we weren't using all of the services that were provided to us. We really just needed internet. We didn't need like the internet cable satellite package. They ended up telling me about deals that I couldn't find anywhere online, and we ended up cutting our internet bill in half. And honestly, it was like a 5 to 10 minute phone call. It was really easy. You can do the exact same thing with your APR on your credit card or trying to increase your limit on your credit card, and a lot of different bills that are offered to you. My biggest tip when it comes to going into those negotiating situations is to be very kind, but still firm, and go in knowledgeable. You want to know what the competitors are offering. That way you can say to them, hey, I've been with your company for a while. I would really like to stay with your company, but so-and-so is offering this deal. What can you do for me? Remember, these companies are fighting to keep you as a client, so make sure that you are getting the best deal. And a lot of times, these are bills that, again, are monthly things that will end up saving you tons over time. For us, being able to cut back on our internet bill, also being able to increase my credit limit, helped out my credit score, which saved me money when I refinanced into a personal loan, and it saved us money that we could put that money toward other things. Next, I budgeted for iced coffee. I know it sounds kind of weird, One of the things that got me out of credit card debt was spending money. But hear me out. I have a really big emotional attachment to Starbucks because growing up, my parents were divorced, and every single Tuesday when I went down to my dad's, we would always drive through Starbucks. It was like our thing. I would get a tall vanilla bean frappuccino. It was like a big deal when he let me get a grande, and I felt like I was such an adult. So I have grown up loving Starbucks. And when I worked there, I ended up loving it even more. The job was meh, but I really liked the feeling of getting a coffee, getting a drink with someone. It brought a lot of value to my life. And when I first started budgeting, I thought that was the thing I needed to cut out. And what ended up happening was I still went to Starbucks. I just A, felt really guilty about it, and B, it wasn't in my budget, so I was overspending somewhere else and putting myself in a bad situation. And then I just felt like I sucked at budgeting and it wasn't for me and I should just stop doing it. So I ended up just spiraling and spending more money. Whereas when I changed my mindset around it and decided I was going to start putting my money toward things that brought value to my life, and I included Starbucks in my budget, I could go there guilt-free and still stay within my spending categories, which made me feel more confident with my budget and my spending and allowed me to cut back in other places, but understand the value of what my money is bringing to me. Of course, iced coffee from Starbucks doesn't bring value to everyone, so the whole point of this point is just talking about not feeling guilty for spending money on the things that do bring you a lot of joy and that you enjoy spending money on. Even when you're in debt, even if you don't have a ton in savings, I am still a big advocate for making room in your budget for those unnecessary purchases. The next big thing that helped was learning to cook. Now, I will be the first to say I am no Chef Gordon Ramsay, okay? I'm not great in the kitchen, but I used to really suck at it, and what I figured out was I hated cooking when I had to sit there and stress out about following a recipe, not knowing what was coming next, trying to time everything, all of the cleanup and all of that went down with it. So I took a step back, found a section of YouTube that provided me with easy, yummy meals that I could memorize how to make, get really good at making, and then it became a lot easier to cook those meals and save me a lot of money. It just felt like such a hassle to cook, so I would end up eating out most of the time because I didn't have the ingredients that I needed on hand to make that random, obscure, really complicated recipe that I saw on Pinterest. And when I took a step back and changed what it meant for me to be a good cook, it made the biggest difference in the world. Now I have like a handful of recipes that I know by heart. I pretty much always have the ingredients on hand to make. And because I know them by heart, it is really easy for me to justify just whipping that up in the kitchen. They don't require like a lot of tools or unnecessary time or cleaning. And since I have that skill set on the back burner, it has stopped me many times from defaulting to ordering out, not because something particularly sounded good, but because I didn't really have another option unless I wanted to cook. And every time that we don't get takeout, we save like 30, 40, 50 bucks, which is huge. Another thing that helped me to pay off credit card debt was actually opening up a high yield savings account. I've talked about some online high yield savings accounts here in this video. I will link that for you all if you're curious what some of the best ones are. But basically it is just an online bank account that gives you more money than a standard savings account. The reason that this helped me to pay off my credit card debt is because I had a separate savings account that the money stayed in and made me money in, rather than having my standard savings account that's linked to my checking where it's really easy to move money back and forth. This felt like something that was a very purposeful way for me to save money. And having that separate high yield savings account, using it for my emergency fund, allowed me to build up my savings. That way I was set and good to go to start focusing on my credit card debt. A huge thing that played a role in me being able to pay off my credit card debt was refinancing to a personal loan. Now, I want to preface this by saying I totally understand that this is not a resource that is available to everyone, but if it is available to you, I want you to know that it is an option, because for the longest time, I didn't even know what personal loans were or that they existed and were a viable option to some people. So if you have high interest debt like credit card debt, there is an option to refinance to a personal loan. Pretty much what this looks like is you go on a place, for me it was Upstart and Lending Club, and you compare offers for basically just a personal loan from a bank, and they offer you a better APR, meaning that you are spending less money on interest over the length of your loan. Now, because it is based on your credit score a lot of times, really this is only an option if you have like 600, 650 plus credit score. If you have a lower credit score, I would not count on this being an option, but that is okay. There are still 9 more tips in this video, tons of other tips that I have mentioned on this channel that still apply to you even if you're not able to refinance your debt, but I wanna make sure that you know that it is an option for you. Keep in mind, you wanna know what your APR is now with your credit card that you're paying. That way you can compare it to the offers that you're getting from these different places. Also keep in mind that there's usually some sort of a fee. This is usually like a percentage of the loan that you're getting. So make sure that you know those numbers and you've done the math to make sure that it's worth it to you to pay that fee and you're not just paying more to refinance your debt. But for me, it saved me hundreds of dollars in interest every month and was a huge factor in me being able to break out of that debt cycle that I was in when it came to credit cards. Number 7 is that I used the debt avalanche to pay off my credit card debt. Now, a lot of you have heard about the debt snowball. It was made very popular by he who should not be named. But what a lot of people don't know is that there is an opposite version of the debt snowball called the debt avalanche. The main difference that you need to know for this video is that with the debt snowball, you pay on the smallest balance first, meaning the smallest debt that you have. With the debt avalanche, you pay the debt that has the highest interest. So what happens with the debt avalanche is that you end up spending less over time and therefore paying off your debt faster because you're getting rid of that high interest debt first. For me, this is what worked. Now, I am one of those people in the personal finance community that really doesn't have a strong opinion either way. Do whatever works for you. As long as it's working for you, that's the one that you should use. But for me, the debt avalanche made the most sense and it saved me the most money over time. Next was that I used a zero-based budget. If you've been here for any amount of time, you know how much of a fan I am of a zero-based budget. I went more into depth about zero-based budgeting here in this video if you want to know more, but basically it just means that you are giving every dollar a job. And what this allowed me to do was to make sure that my money was going toward the things that I actually cared about. Before, what often happened to me is that I would get paid and then suddenly a few days later I didn't have any money and I really wasn't sure where that money went. So if you are one of those people that find yourself asking, where in the heck did my money go? This is the budgeting method that is for you. I love it because it is more in depth, but because of that you feel like you have the most control over your money. And honestly, this was one of the biggest steps that I took toward paying off my debt. It wasn't until I got on a budgeting system that worked for me that I stopped cycling in and out of debt. And I truly believe that it is the reason today that I have been able to save money, have an emergency fund, invest, and pay off that debt so quickly. Because I knew exactly what every dollar I had was doing for me inside of my budget. And therefore, I was able to make sure that my money was in line with my values and also my financial goals. Another resource that I really took advantage of were cashback apps. I am a huge fan of cashback apps. If you've been here at all, you know I use a ton of them, and that is because for me, it's like a no-brainer. If these free apps are available for you to save money, you might as well use them. Personally, my favorite one that I use right now is Flues. I actually just did a video in partnership with them. I'll link that up here, talking all about Flues and how I use it to save money. But I love that one because you get the most cash back compared to any other apps that you can use, especially at places like Dunkin', Chipotle, and DoorDash that we use all of the time. But I have tons of cashback apps that I recommend for you. I will link them down below as well. Depending on how hands-on you want to be and how much money you want to save, there is a cashback app for you. And trust me, whenever you are trying to pay off credit card debt, every penny counts. So if there are ways for you to save money and not have to cut back on things in order to save that money, take advantage of that. And finally, number 10, another really important thing that helped me to pay off my credit card debt was reading personal finance books. There are tons of amazing personal finance books out there. I will link my Amazon shop down below where I have all of my favorites linked. But 2 of my top favorites are I Will Teach You to Be Rich and Broke Millennial. I feel like I got the most information out of those 2. I learned so much. For me, I just listened to the audiobooks on my way to work. Back then, I was commuting like hours a day for work, so I had a lot of downtime in the car, and I used that to my advantage by listening to these audiobooks. They were both really good, really informative, but also easily digestible. I highly recommend them. Okay everyone, that is it for 10 things that I did to get out of $20,000 of credit card debt in a year. I really hope that you enjoyed and you learned something cool. If you did, please remember to give this video a big thumbs up. It really helps out the YouTube algorithm, helps boost this video to the top. That way more people can find this content. And I will see you all next time. Bye.